Antonio Conte, Tottenham boss, there speaking to Be in Sports. We only have a 1% chance of winning the league. And look, I kind of understand what he's saying. You look at the clubs that he's managed over the years. He's gone into those clubs and we have a chance. It's a big chance as well. He's coming to Tottenham and they don't have a chance. But he always knew this before he took the job. Like, this is nothing new with Spurs. He didn't take a team that was fighting for Champions League football and winning the titles over the last 20 years. So what's the surprise?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we always have to take into consideration, though, with Antonio Conte, that his English is not as good as some of the 100%. Other Premier League managers. And so sometimes I don't think he is able to express himself in the way that he wants to. But the general gist of it is that, you know, he's kind of suggesting, isn't he, that he doesn't feel that at Tottenham he's got the opportunities to push on and challenge for major honours like he wants to. I think what's really interesting, he's done an interview with Sky Italia as well, which is going to drop in full in a few days' time, apparently. But I've seen some translations from that. And apparently he's talking about the fact that at Spurs, he's understood now that the philosophy is very much about bringing in young players who might explode in the future, as opposed to the ready-made footballers that you need to challenge now. And I think the fact that he's saying that suggests to me that he didn't know that was the case when he went in there. And it just seems strange to me because Tottenham were chasing him for ages. And he didn't budge and he didn't want the job, seemingly. They ended up going for Nuno Espirito Santo, who was like, what, 12th, 13th choice from what we were reading. Then they managed to get Conte in finally. I can't believe that he hasn't done his due diligence around the way Tottenham operate and what he was going to be given ahead of time. Yeah,
it's almost like he was promised, and sort of all the promises, and they won't be down on contracts, will be verbally, have not been delivered. And I find that strange. I do find it strange that Tottenham have always been stingy in the transfer market, if you like, under Daniel Levy. But come on, you get a manager like Conte in, it almost makes no sense if you're not going to give him money to spend. Everywhere he's been, he's had money to spend. That's how it works. It's almost like getting Pep in. As good as Pep is as a manager, he almost works with money. Yes, he can improve players, but ultimately you're going to need to spend some money. And I find it strange how they've not really done that. I know they bought a couple of players in, more Juventus reserves, if I'm honest with you, have come into the... That's what they are, aren't they? Let's be real. I mean, they're good players, but they weren't starting 11 players. That's just not enough. It's not enough, especially when Son's not been on top form this season. Harry Kane's been nowhere near his best. Lucas has been okay, but you look at the squad and you think, it's not good enough, man. Wolves played them off the park. Wolves.
Yeah, that squad that he needed ripping out a long time ago. Yeah. And what they keep doing is they keep thinking that actually it's cheaper to bring in a elite manager, a Mourinho, a Conte, and hope that they can extract more from these players than it is to go and overhaul the entire
Harry Winks,
team.
For example, as much as every time, Harry Winks is a weird one. I don't want this to be about Winks because it is what it is, but he plays 1 in 7. Like, one great game in 7, everyone's like, oh, you don't need a midfielder, you've got Harry Winks in there. Harry Winks isn't good enough for a top 4 team.
No,
He's not good enough. He's not good enough at all. Like, Harry Winks, I don't think I would notice Harry Winks in Everton. You wouldn't notice him and think, oh, there's a player there. He always seems to get a game. Harry Winks, it's not good enough. Players like that, not good enough. Ben Davies, it's not good enough, is he? I mean, you're talking about good left backs that are attacking and marauding. It's just simply not good enough for the team that Tottenham are trying to be.
No, I completely agree. As I say, I think they needed to rip the squad out. They obviously don't want to do that. They've tried to bridge that gap by bringing in these elite managers. I don't want to say this really as an Arsenal fan, but I have got a tiny bit of sympathy for Tottenham. Because what's happened is, and we know from experience, right? We've been through this. We built a new stadium that took up huge financial resource, and then for a while we had to play it a little bit safer in the transfer market. It led to us losing big players. It led to us not being able to compete in the market to bring in stars. But with Tottenham, I know exactly what Tottenham are going through. But the problem that they've had, which is even worse, is that the pandemic has hit and they've lost loads of revenue that would have contributed to paying back towards the stadium. They've lost out on events outside of football that were going to be hosted in that stadium as well, that would have brought them huge amounts of revenue. So I just think that Tottenham's financial situation is perhaps not as healthy as maybe we think it is from the outside. And although Daniel Levy has a bit of a history and a bit of a record of trying not to kind of overexert themselves in terms of spending, I think he's probably in a difficult situation right now. And I think the fans probably need to consider that when they go really big on the whole we're not spending enough thing.
What he's always done, Daniel Levy, over the last sort of 10, 15 years is sell their best players. So it's been a case of, okay, we'll sell and then we'll spend. You think of Gareth Bale, and that all that money was really given to the managers to spend. You think of Modric and Berbatov and Michael Carrick down the years. I don't know if Harry Kane's worth the money that he was worth, 14, 15. I personally don't think he is worth that. But do you think there's a case where Conte looks at Harry Kane and thinks, I can find better in Italy for cheap here, and if I can get 100 million for you, I can go to Italy and shop around. And you look at someone like Vlahovic, so you were very interested in, and think something like that. He probably thinks there is something like that in the Italian First Division, which is better than what Harry Kane is.
Yeah, maybe. I think with Tottenham, though, the problem was in the summer that they brought Nuno in as the manager. Remember, he was the manager during this whole Harry Kane saga. Yeah. And you have to trust in the guy that you've got in charge, and in Paratici as well, the director of football, that if you do sell Harry Kane, that there's a plan to replace him and to compensate for what you're losing. It's no good saying, well, we could do with the money, let's cash in 150 million on Harry Kane.
We've got Son and Lucas
exactly.
Up front for 4 months,
and they've done that before, Spurs. Remember when they sold Gareth Bale, they brought in 7-8 players who, with the exception of maybe Christian Eriksen, none of them met the kind of expectations that were levelled with them.
Indeed. Do you think Conte is there beyond starting next season?
No, I don't. I think that Antonio Conte is already making those noises that suggest that there is a bit of a breakdown in the relationship between he and the club's hierarchy. I don't think he'd have taken the job in the first place had it not been for Paratici.
It's always weird, yeah? Very quickly on this one, every time a club has a long-standing manager, you've had it with Arsene Wenger, at Man United, we had it to an extent with Rafa. The next manager, it always takes like 4 or 5 managers to get it right the next time. Always takes, and I feel like Tottenham could be going through that now. You know, if and I think Conte will leave, that's 3 or 4 different managers now before they get the next one right. Tough times for Spurs. All right, you're listening to The Social on talkSPORT2. Next up, Twitter Corner. Where next and what next for Paul Pogba?